CityWorks Expo is a collaborative, co-creative, and multidisciplinary idea exchange and festival conference that happens each fall in Roanoke, Virginia. By day, attendees are immersed in thought-provoking presentations, riveting performances, and engaging dialogue. By night, the conference continues with after-hours networking opportunities during street festivals, parties, and musical events. To learn more about Expo, visit cityworksexpo.com. Expo 2014 was made possible by these fine sponsors.
Scholar at MIT. I do my work at the MIT Media Lab, which is just an amazing place. It is a research facility that was founded in 1985 by Nicolas Negroponte, and it's an anti-disciplinary place. Some of our principles are risk over safety, disruption over discipline, practice over theory, just to give you an idea of the set of mind of the people that I have the privilege to be around with at this amazing place. These are 27 of our research groups. We do a lot of things from affective computing to biomechanics, social computing, software aging, playful systems, personal robots, and so forth. So you can see it's a very diverse place for technology and innovation to happen. We have about $50 million a year for our budget to do our work, and we have corporate sponsors that vary from Google, Time Magazine, Volkswagen, Toyota, eBay, Intel, Shell, you name it. So these companies come to the lab every year to collaborate on some of the projects that we are working on. Some of the projects that have been developed at the lab, one of my colleagues, Cinta Vresal, developed a technology where robots are able to actually interact with us in a different way. They are able to learn from our reactions. They're able to sense what we are feeling. They're able to respond to us in a much sort of real interactive way. It's a very, very interesting project. The kids love this. I have 3 kids. I bring them to the lab every time they behave. And they really, really like to interact with these machines. Another spin-off from the lab in 1997, this is actually where the ink was created. So now this is the largest company for electronic digital paper in the world. And a lot of the devices that we all live with are basically based on this technology. Professor Hugh Herr, he does an amazing job. He was an amputee. He had an accident in 1988, climbing accident, and he was an amputee himself, and he started working on the technology that will give people the opportunity to actually have a new way of actually walking and having a normal life, even though they've had an accident like this. And it's very, very impressive. If you see Hugh walking around the lab and he's wearing pants, you will not notice the difference. The way he walks and goes up and down the stairs is just amazing. And when you see him wearing shorts for the first time, it's really shocking, because you actually see that from the knees down, he's wearing some of the technology that he developed at the lab, and it's something really, really impressive, and it's going to change millions of people's lives throughout the development of the technology. And then this is probably something that a lot of you have played with. The Guitar Hero for PlayStation was also developed at our lab. So as you can see, the broad of interests and projects around the lab are really, really amazing. Finally, One Laptop for a Child project was also developed at the lab by Nicolas Negroponte, which is our founder, and he basically had the vision to put a laptop in every single children at the really, really poor children around the world, and to give them the opportunity to interact with these machines at a very early stage, and he's been giving away thousands and thousands of computers around the world. Our group, the Changing Places group, has been doing workshops around the world and in the specific topics around mobility, which has been one of the most important areas that we have emphasized our work on. And we have done workshops in Portugal, in Vienna, Austria, Also, we've been looking at a couple of times at our campus at MIT and trying to understand how can we develop better systems around mobility, around energy, around sustainability, around walkable spaces and so forth, trying to understand these places and trying to gather as much information as possible to be able to determine how can we change places that people live to have a better life and to apply some of the technologies that we are working on in a real setting. We did something after the tsunami in Japan. We did a really incredible workshop there. We've been in China a couple of times. I will talk a little bit about that later too. And then I had to take them to Quito. So last semester we did a workshop on Quito's historic center, which was really, really amazing. And we took a group of students and faculty to basically have the opportunity to rethink and reflect on the sustainability of this enormous historic heritage that we have, and to work around new technologies to make this place better and more sustainable and more accessible to future generations. And it was an incredible, incredible experience. Two of the projects that the students developed are actually moving forward to a different phase. One of them was a digital system to be able to create an inventory for all the built environment around the historic center, and to look at the different uses and vacancies and commercial and government sort of real estate properties, and to have a better sense of how can we make this a much more accessible and diverse place for everybody. So a group of students still working on that. And another one was a Archimedes screw-based technology to be able to recycle water and produce energy and clean water within a public space in the middle of the central core of the historic center. So it was really interesting to do that. 95% of the population growth is within cities, and 93% of patented inventions in the world is coming from cities. So there's a lot of importance of what's going on in cities. And the question that we are asking ourselves is, what enables creative, innovative, entrepreneurial, high-performance places to come to life? Places like Roanoke, for example. What has made this place so special within the last couple of years? And that's the kind of questions that we are asking. And in that sense, we are definitely looking at the concept that density increases interactions. That's one thing. The next thing that we're looking at is that diversity brings the connections that we need to create more of these spaces along the way. And then we believe that innovation is somehow a matter of density plus diversity plus proximity plus the social ties that allow all of this to actually happen. And that's the base for some of the studies that we're doing. Talking about density, this is a very interesting study that the group did a couple of months ago. If all 7 billion people in the world were concentrated in a city that has the same density as Paris, this is what the world would look like. 3 states. That's all we would need to have sort of the type of city we believe will be sustainable and appropriate for the future. The rest of the space will be people-free if we had the right density. So this is a really, really important element in our work. This is the type of place that we want. We want sort of like a Paris for everybody, a places for people, which is, we're trying to focus all of our technologies in doing so. And this is what we are trying to avoid. We're working on 4 different prototypes right now. We have been designing them. They're in a sort of interesting phase at the moment. One of them is looking at the density in Paris again. And if you see how Paris, and I'm sure a lot of you have the opportunity to be in there, you find a lot of things around you. At a 20-minute walk distance, you have a metro station, you have Paris cafes. If you look at the dots, that's what Paris cafes look like. The same thing with shops, or physicians, or even pharmacies. So you can tell that, you know, how these places are working are really, really interesting in a way that is allowing people to actually interact within their own sort of neighborhoods and zones. And in doing so, we started thinking about how can we design models that people will actually really understand. And not just sophisticated models that only few people understand, but just non-expert stakeholders to be able to show them and illustrate how a city will have a better opportunity of these sort of developments. So we thought, why don't we start playing with Legos for a semester, see what happens. Legos are very, very flexible sort of toy, construction little piece that everybody relates to. They're very accessible. So we started playing with measurements and giving them different shapes and forms in terms of what they will mean within a model structure. And we got really involved with this. It seemed like a really good idea. Students and faculty and other people seemed to really, 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 really like it. So we decided to move forward with this. And we created a partnership with the Lego company. And we started taking it a little more serious. And we said, how can we take it further? Okay, we got the Legos. It's very flexible. We can create different sort of models. But how can we take this a little further? So we inspired ourselves on the Avatar film and on a holotable based on projections, and we said, that could be interesting. Why don't we take this and try to project it into the Lego models to see what happens, to see if we can have sort of like a broader 3D model to understand something in a much more physical context. And we basically replaced the typical models that cities have been using for a long time. This is the model of Shanghai. These models are really, really expensive. They're incredible, but they cost, hundreds of thousands, sometimes even millions of dollars to build, and they're very rigid, because if you want to change something within the model, it takes a lot of effort and time and energy to do so. So we decided to replace that for this. And we started testing and trying different things. So the first model that we built was the model of Kendall Square, which is the area where our campus is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And with a group of students, we designed the model for Kendall Square, and we started playing around and started gathering a lot of information. We decided to go for MIT because we have so much information that we don't even know what to do with the information ourselves. So we said, we have so much information already. Let's start playing with it and see what we can find with our model that will allow us to understand the area a little better. And in that context, we started looking at satellite views of the area, projecting those into the model, land use, mobility, solar radiation, even social networks and how they're working around the campus and so forth, and even venture capital. We basically came up with an idea to locate where venture capital is around Cambridge, the Cambridge area, to be able to understand what the uses of the buildings are and so forth. So another one of the projects that we're working on has to do with mobility. This is a street in Shanghai. It's not even rush hour. As you can see on the sign, the sign is green. It will turn green in a second. That means this is before rush hour. So when that turns red, it's really, really insane. And that's the reality that a lot of the cities are facing right now. These are sort of like the noise levels at many cities in Asia and Latin America because of that congestion, and people are living within this sort of atmosphere on a day-to-day basis, and that's the kind of problems that we're trying to look at. Pollution, sprawl, cities like LA, cities like Miami, cities like Mexico City. And this is some of the projects that we are working on in terms of mobility. For us, the most important, our most important fact is that cities have to be walkable. Cities have to be for people. So whatever projects we work on in terms of mobility have to privilege the walking aspect of within a city. This is a prototype that we built for a shared vehicle. This is the simulation. I'm going to go a little faster, but we turned in about 3 years, we turned that simulation into a real vehicle, which is in the testing phase right now in Europe. It's been developed by, it was a spin-off from MIT. It's being developed with one of my colleagues, with a company from Spain and a company from China, and it's basically a vehicle that will be able to sort of transform itself to use the least space possible and to be part of a shared economy. And the vehicle is actually in a safety testing phase right now. Another project that we're working on is food for cities and urban agriculture. This is going to become a real problem in a few years from now because water is going to be really scarce. So we are looking at how we can create the technology for people to be able to grow their own food within a very closed environment without the use of water or solar energy. And it's really interesting because it has a lot of benefits within the environment, and we basically view our future cities something like this. Finally, we're working on hyper-efficient housing, which is robotic architecture, and we created this animation to try to show what we were trying to aim for. We were trying to see how can we build transformable spaces that will help cities give the people the opportunity to live in better conditions within a really small space. Space is becoming a luxury, space is becoming very expensive. Cities are having a really hard time bringing all these people in. Developing is an issue. So we were thinking about how can we, and we love parties too. We were thinking of how can we create a prototype to start understanding the possibilities for these technologies better. And I'm going to finish with a video for the prototype that we actually created. So two of my good friends and colleagues from Spain built this prototype in about 6 months. And this video, the first month that was on YouTube, had over 1 million views, which was pretty amazing. Can't forget the parties. So finally, really quickly, we have been looking at concepts like smart city or eco city or sustainable city, green city, and so forth. And we don't want to do that anymore. We basically want to look at cities in a different way. We're trying to do so. We're doing an enormous effort to do so. We're looking at density. We're looking at diversity. We're looking at events and content like Expo. We need more Expos in many other places. We need that sort of thing to happen, and we're trying to get our technologies to help in doing so. And basically, all of our work is about, and it's a really, really, really big challenge because we have all this amazing technology around us, but our work is about creating cities for people and not machines. Thank you.